Patch 63.6 introduced over 100 new changes to ARK, some quality of life, some bug fixes, but a lot of them we need to go through in detail and explain exactly what's changed to ARK Survival Ascended. Let's go. First off, Bob's Tall Tales has introduced a bunch of different content additions to its DLC, a surprising series of additions. But first off, attachments to the battle rig. We've got now a cannon turret attachment, a sludge dumper attachment, a mine dropper, and then there's new wasteland skin variants. The vault skin has got a new variant, as well as the small storage box skin and the large storage box skin. Players now have the ability to toggle on TPV mouse smoothing, allowing some input lag, and notable for the PvP community out there, and that's found under settings general camera. Skeleton trophies now finally stack. A welcomed addition. Took far too long with far too many skeleton trophies taking up your inventory. They all are now stacked and are now grindable within an industrial grinder, allowing you a small amount of keratin once grinded, as well as the amount of skeleton pieces you're picking up has been dropped by about 50%, so you won't be getting your inventory swamped by a range of different bones that you're never going to use unless you really want to decorate your battle rigs. Wind turbines have had a complete redesign, being more akin to the wind turbines you know from ARK Survival Evolved, and it's taken a very long time for them to be addressed. They are not now the OP generators that they once were, nor should they ever have been, but you know, you took advantage of this, everybody took advantage of this, and now you can't no more. There is a decay damage over 14 days, stopping at 10% health, and once that 10% health has been reached, they will no longer provide power. As well as any structures being too close to the wind turbines will actually block it from being powered. So, you know, like an actual real-life wind turbine, it needs airflow to spin. And seeing that you need airflow, you definitely don't need water flow, so you can now no longer put these underwater to be powered there either. Tesla Coils, the Aberration Bob's Tall Tales Turret Edition, has had some balance changes where you'll find the arrow consumption per shot is now increased to 5 crystals, allowing a more sustained fire duration, more akin to heavy turrets. With bright mode, when set to players only, will no longer stun and dismount when riding creatures. With one last change to them, that the charged mode damage has been reduced by 65% and increased by 20% to players and dinos respectively. But turns out it's some clever wording with picking up carts, and in fact it's only grabbing carts with creatures on the ground, so no flyers, only creatures such as the Karkinos, and you might find some weird crazy things happen when you attempt to do so. But you won't be able to abuse any creatures that are standing on the cart. If once picked up, those creatures will fall off. A big surprising addition, boss cooldowns are now displayed on the boss teleport engrams. You've now no longer got to guess when to do a boss, because the display will be there for you to be ready for your boss running element farming, with a new indicator for the tech teleporter screen to notify you any TPs you set to public in case you've left any on accidentally and you need to turn them off pretty sharpish. Armadoggo's Spike It attachment, which is sort of a cross between the Spyglass and the Tech binoculars, can now be toggled to be permanently on instead of a limited time activation, so you can actually use this a bit more efficiently and might actually make Armadoggo's worth taming now. And a big welcomed addition, Titans, the Desert Titan, Forest Titan and Ice Titan. When fighting them, there was a chance of them despawning pretty quickly during the fight. We encountered this a few times. There is now a new delayed despawn logic check by 60 seconds after creation and unstasis to allow you to run back to those Titans before they instantly despawn during a fight, and you lose all of the stuff you got to spawn the thing to fight the thing in the first place. A new favourite server session list has changed, that's in a beta stage at the moment, that's hopefully allowing you to favourite your servers rather than them disappearing from the session list after a server update. And even offline, you'll still be able to see these servers too. Some big ones for performance: there's now an improved speed of UI rendering, so when you pull up your main menu or you pull up your inventory, you should be seeing this rendering much faster, and as a result, less crashes. With now the option to select no frame generation, which is a big one. A lot of people out there didn't want frame generation. You can now opt to do this or not to do this if you want to, with another option to actually upscale FSR if you prefer to run FSR, and a quality mode for FSR if you want to run it balanced or performance or super duper quality mode, depending on your specs. We're going to have a good in-depth look at this and what exactly each one provides in detail. We're going to now show the differences in performance depending on which graphic settings you pick. So a massive fix, the level 1 bug that you keep running into where players are level 1 and creatures are level 1. Apparently this has now been resolved, so you shouldn't see any more level 1 bugged creatures, and hopefully this will transpire to players as well. With the occasional run-in of DLC content such as the Fantastic Tames or anything from the Bob's Tall Tales, there was an ownership issue where it would tell you that you don't own it. That has now been resolved. Dragon Boss has changed quite a bit. It doesn't aggro to any structures or dinos above its arena anymore, but I have noticed as a result of that, the dragon's flying around in some very weird places that I don't know whether that was intended or not. Hopefully this isn't going to be a new bug and is just simply resolved. Wild manners should now no longer get stuck in the air. Fingers crossed we'll never see any more dirty, glitchy, buggy manners stuck up in the skies, as well as them jumping forward when a server restarts, an annoying bug to see, though I wouldn't know because I kill them before they can even jump forward. The training options on unconscious manners, that was a bug that has now been resolved. Apparently there was a server stall related to carts, obviously crashing servers, which is insane. That has now been resolved, as well as a bunch of ways you can see through terrain in photo mode. You can now no longer do this. Purple OSDs can now no longer be ended and looted by enemy tribes on PvE, which is insane, as well as King Titan loot no longer being able to be looted too. Zeppelins can no longer transport wild dinos on PvE, so the whole Dreadnoughtus exploit that was being used for taming still exists, but you can't do this on PvE anymore because obviously griefing's griefing, and you know, Dreadnoughtus, that thing can do some serious damage. Santiago notes are finally available to be unlocked. You can go and find them, you can go and view them, you can go read them on Aberration and Extinction, and surprisingly you don't need H and an A like you did in ASE. You can just go out and unlock them to your heart's content. Feel free. And especially surrounding the lore with Lost Colony, it's a great time to get involved. Some creatures that should take reduced damage from turrets, such as your tanks out there. There was a bug there where there wasn't, and it was taking full damage. That has now been resolved, as well as the King Titan disappearing, going invisible to view to players, which isn't ideal when you're fighting the big meanie. Wyverns will finally grant you kibble if grinded in bio grinders, and obviously going to reward you some nice tasty big kibble there. As well as for solars, they'll remain buried after a server restart. They won't be popping out of the floor no more. Mech MDSM shields will now take durability when being hit. Before they were pretty invulnerable. Maywing variant Maeguanas will no longer get levels in oxygen stats, which means you'll get some super duper even stronger Maeguanas out there, as well as the weird vertical swimming behavior that would cause the dino to tilt its body horizontally. That shouldn't be an issue no more, as well as missing icons for Maeguanas enable or disable nursing and a back button to get out of that nursing option, as well as some weird texture issues when gliding along the surface on a Maeguana. That's now been resolved. A few skin issues on its wings and nails when walking, riding or idle has been resolved, as well as that weird jitter you would see mid-flight. You can now smoothly glide to wherever you need to go, with its animation sometimes stalling during landing after a small jump being fixed. It popping out its tongue whilst unconscious has now been a much needed fix, because you want to see Maeguana's tongues, right? When equipping a torch to its saddle, that's now been put in the right location, and you should now be belly flopping to your heart's content to get all of the berries you will ever need at a consistent rate. With one more Maeguana fix, if holding down sprint, sometimes it wouldn't glide before jumping on a server, so all that combined should make a Maeguana a much worthy tame on Astraeus. Baby Gigantoraptor feathers were a bit weird though when seated in a Maeguana saddle. That's now been resolved, as well as shoulder mounted pyromanes not teleporting into boss fights. A big one because people love their pyromanes, right? Apparently that's been resolved and you'll now find them to teleport in with you, but obviously just be wary that that's going to take up a boss slot. As well as some attachments shown in first person view during pet animations were a little bit off there. You'll now be able to not see these. There's now finally gamepad support for removing custom skins from individual armor pieces. Finally, console players out there and anyone that uses a gamepad on PC, you can finally take off those custom skins if you don't want them. As well as a bunch of issues with carts attached to creatures that will sometimes sink into the mesh. They're not going to be as buggy as they used to be. So that means any carts floating or vibrating when foundations were placed on them should be resolved as well. And my word, only took over a year to be resolved, but finally in the Skylord cave you will find supply crates spawning on single player. A funny bug that I quite enjoyed but needed to be fixed: characters' legs rotating to one side when you're gliding straight down. You know, characters looked a bit odd when they were doing that. It needed to be resolved. It's now been fixed, as well as a few feet jitter issues when doing small movements. That's also been resolved as well. And a rock drake with its inability to glide when jumping out of the water, a very frustrating bug to see. I didn't understand what the issue was there, but apparently it was a bug since Aberration. That has now been fixed too, as well as the camera pushing into the ceiling when riding a climbing dino on a ceiling upside down. The camera did some weird and wonderful things. Your camera should now go into the right place when you go into camera mode. Explosive spears had some weird sound effects issue when being shot down by a turret. That's now no longer an issue, so if you are using explosive spears and you don't want your ears pierced by a constant ring, you can throw them out to your heart's content. As well as chibis appearing weirdly floating in the air when teleporting if you've got an Armadoggo, with a bunch more Armadoggo fixes, such as when in companion mode, disappearing if server restarts while client is dead, so your Armadoggo should stay with you if a server ever restarts. As well as the weird bug it would permanently die if the player was logged out. You can now make sure an Armadoggo is in companion mode and you won't lose it if you do decide to log out. As well as its saddle weirdly floating every now and then. We saw this quite a few times when flying, teleporting. The Armadoggo saddle should sit on the Armadoggo as intended, as well as a weird visual issue when riding a basilisk with the Armadoggo too. With one last one, that was a weird duplication bug with Armadoggo companions. I never saw this one myself, but it would have been pretty cool to see it. Multiple Armadoggos all around you as companions to run free. Now you can only have one. You can't have a full-blown pack to go mental with. Scouts were weirdly remaining deployed in single player when reloading a save. That's now no longer the case. As well as velos bizarrely sliding around whilst pooping. They should actually stop and poop in place. And battle rigs got a serious heavy look at. So kicking off with them being stuck in garages after removing or adding attachments, that's no longer the issue. Their ability to destroy redwood trees and extinction won't happen no more, so redwood trees will remain, and it's a wonder what will happen with redwood trees on older servers. The occasional issue where a turret user would fall through the mesh, that's no longer an issue, as well as rendering. Players in a battle rig, they would just be floating or standing, with a big one being players being pushed under the mesh when dismounting a battle rig, which was of course being exploited, as well as being just a general annoyance, and as well as being a deterrent to using a battle rig. You should no longer be falling under the floor when you pop out of one, as well as a weird crafting bug that would sometimes happen with the garage. You couldn't make anything in the thing. That's hopefully been resolved. The garage's high decay timer is now no longer a thing. You can't use that to exploit maybe having some stuff in place for a long time. Another huge big one, and hopefully a statement we're going to hold dear to: battle rigs getting stuck in the mesh and unable to move. A massive issue and a reason we wasn't using battle rigs. Hopefully that has now been fixed as intended, and able to see any cosmetics applied to other people riding their battle rigs. You should see their cosmetics applied to them. That was replicated when a costume was applied has been resolved, as well as battle rigs constantly being sunk into the mesh upon reloading single player or multiplayer and looked blooming awful. Battle rigs should now stay where they stay, as well as weirdly launching up into the air when a turret was equipped and a secondary driver attempted to drive the battle rig. That's no longer an issue. A crash that was bizarrely unexpected but makes sense. Using a gene scanner whilst inside a battle rig was causing a crash, and now you should no longer crash when using a gene scanner. But a massive one, and we may go into this one in a bit more detail, is that blueprint quality now increases damage dealt and durability on all battle rig attachments. That means are actually going to do some proper damage as intended, and we're going to do a deep dive into this to see how far we can really push this and how good some of these Ascendant turret and front end attachments could be against creatures. But in turn, that does mean any durability that wasn't being reduced with turrets, which we've seen every now and then, is now a thing. So when you are using turrets, you do need to be mindful of that durability popping down and needing the battle rig to get a repair in. As well as photo mode having some weird collision issues with battle rigs. That was quite annoying to see. Now when you go into photo mode, you can see exactly what you want to see. And Dreadnoughtus taming, hello there. It took a minute for this one to pop into view. Up until now, anybody on a server when attempting to tame a Dreadnoughtus, and that's by leading it to an element vein and alpha for one, preferably, you would find any of the corrupted that spawned would just simply freeze in place, making Dreadnoughtus taming the easiest taming process ever. Sadly, on single player, you didn't have this luxury, but now everybody doesn't have that luxury, and it's a much overdue fix that leaves me wondering, is it too late for that? Doesn't everybody just have Dreadnoughtuses by now? But nevertheless, it's in finally. I'm sure whoever made that taming process will be happy to hear people are actually taming it the way they need to. Enforcers having an inconsistent tail location based on its distance has now been resolved, as well as Nameless spawning when near Z plants on Aberration. I found this a few times when we were playing Aberration way back when, made no sense then. Now they will actually not be where they should be. Z plants are meant to be a place of safety. Survivor Mate's weight would display as 0 on servers when leaving render. That's been resolved, as well as getting confused with resource variants such as scrap metal and metal ingots. Some weird issue with its dock station floating when destroying a structure that it was placed on has been resolved. And Turtle Eyes, in particular, its right eye, it had some weird pink eye issues, has now been fixed, so turtle eyes are working as turtle eyes are meant to be turtle-eyed. Velos shooting indefinitely, that was a bug that was weird and was happening with any towns Velos. You now no longer can do that. Iguanodons can now fit through open barn doors. Didn't know that was a problem. Apparently it was. No, it's not. As well as a visual issue with mech footprints appearing through foliage and structures. You should no longer see mech footprints appearing out of thin air, as well as the losing of items whenever you had one cryoed up into a Dreadmare and the Dreadmare died. Power Rangers gets an overdue fix for the Megazord beam visual effects getting cut off when firing through the surface of water, and the Power Ranger Giga's tail sweep attack has an improved animation now. A weird transparent material on tech rifles has been resolved, as well as footprint dust particles not lining up with players' footsteps correctly. Visual issues in Extinction's ice cave. Finally, there were some weird lighting bugs when you entered and exited that. That's no longer an issue. As well as cosmetics being placed in the hot bar appearing as blueprints and couldn't be removed. That was an annoying bug to see, and now that's been resolved. As well as a weird visual jitter when using frame generation being on a creature's platform saddle. Oh my god, that has been one of the most annoying bugs, especially for me, over the last few months. We are now no longer going to be freezing in place if we've got frame gen on, sitting on saddles. Thank you for that one. Rex textures were appearing grey when hit with resin by a rhino. That's no longer an issue. As well as players dismounting a buried basilisk becoming invisible. Oh my god, the exploits must have been something else with that one. Deinosuchus's HUD elements were weirdly misaligned and overlapped. That's a bit more tidier than it was. King Titan now targets the Mega Mech. I wondered why we were able to kill King Titan so easy with the Mega Mech, and that's why everybody was saying use the Mega Mech. We now know that it was because the King Titan wasn't actually targeting the Mega Mech, and it will now, so I'll be mindful when using one. The camera braking when entering tiny spaces, that was an issue every now and then. As well as Tuzo soaking turrets through the mesh. Good grief, was that still a thing? That's no longer a thing. As well as Ice Titan sliding or getting stuck when spamming all of its attacks, so you can't now slide by gently as a giant massive titan. Scrap golems couldn't disguise as a rock. You can now disguise as a rock. Took a hot minute there. As well as element imbued gasoline not displaying incorrectly in fuel timers and structures. You can now do that, and if you don't know, element imbued gasoline offers a giant improvement over normal gasoline, with it originally applying the regular gasoline time. Now you will see an improved timer. A long overdue fix, the extended swamp fever cough. Even if you cured it, you will continue coughing forever and a day. That has now been resolved. Thank God for that. I can run around and not worry about coughing. Gravity grenades had some serious bounce to them. That's been reduced. As well as the Homo Deus cosmetics unlocking when completing Alpha Ascension. There was some issue unlocking multiple Homo Deus cosmetics. That's no longer a thing anymore. Excitable traits can now be applied specifically to the Deinosuchus's Gigabyte attack cooldown, and you might want to look into that one because Gigabyte is a monster of an attack against Titans. Surprised to see it's not on the list of something they've nerfed. Pegos were doing dodo sounds when picking up gacha crystals every now and then. What the hell? But they're no longer doing that. As well as baby flyers attempting to land after being forced to fly when entering water. That one took a hot minute. Single player saves not spawning dinos correctly on Aberration. There we go. A lot of people were asking what the hell's going on there. Now you know it was an issue. It's now been resolved. A few gamepad support issues with mods, as well as some UI inventory issues with mods, which in fact doesn't appear to be working. as well as a bunch of invisible rocks appearing on Scorched Earth and Astraeus on Xbox. And a big one that I heard a lot of people discussing and finally has been resolved, Astraeus, if owning it with ARK on Game Pass, it was causing some crazy crash. There's your issue, now been resolved, thank God for that. And there you go, 100 fixes, that was a lot to read off. There is actually a few more dedicated to Astraeus, but I wanted to cover the ones that were generalized across all maps there. Good stuff, good welcomed additions. Hopefully, especially looking at battle rigs, they're going to be worth your time, as well as Armadoggos, two things that were brought in with the Extinction Bob's DLC that I feel like we've kind of just abandoned at this point now. I want to see battle rigs being used more and more. Let's check them out. I'll be doing a more in-depth look at them in the next video. So until then, my name's Raasclark. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and as always, peace out.